Hey guys, what's up? What's up? Welcome back to the Create With Us podcast, where we take you behind the screens. My name is Brett Barley. Thank you so much for joining us for our first official episode. We've had kind of an episode, but this is the first one with a guest. We're super duper excited about it. Joining me today is Jeff Vinn. Jeff, what's good, buddy?
Yeah, here we are, our first official podcast, and I'm so excited about our guest, who you're going to introduce in a minute. And I've had the pleasure of being on his podcast, and I think he's going to bring some great value with what he does. So I'm excited to learn about his entrepreneurial journey as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So just to give you guys a little bit of a reminder of what our podcast is about moving forward, we're going to give you all kinds of strategies to grow your business and influence using the power of marketing and entrepreneurship. So our focus is building community, don't compete, collaborate. And a great way to do that is to bring in awesome people like our guest today. So without further ado, let's bring in Blake Benz. Come on in, Blake. Come on down.
Here he is.
What's up, Blake? How's it going, man?
The imaginary door that opens.
That's
and
right.
I step into the Zoom call or whatever.
Like Narnia, you just show up on a podcast.
I know, man. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for joining us. Like we said, our first ever guest, and we couldn't think of anybody better to kick it off with. So thanks so much for taking some time to hang out with us. Blake here does the Good Advice podcast. He does all kinds of stuff for business owners, entrepreneurs, startup founders, leaders to review how to grow and scale your business. Blake, did I nail that? Is that about right?
Nailed it. Hey, there's nothing worse. Since I've had a podcast for a while. This is y'all's first episode with a guest. There's nothing more daunting than that intro, because some people will be like, "Yeah, just say whatever. I don't care." But then some people will give you like the longest thing, and you're like, "Okay, I don't want to screw this up." But you nailed it, though. It was really good.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah, we don't want to go like too overboard.
Yeah. He literally changed my life. We're like, wait, what? Okay.
Yeah. Well, good stuff, man. Well, let's jump right into it, Blake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do? Tell us about your hustle.
Yeah, sure. So I run a company called Good Advice, and the short of it is I was working as an executive coach in the consulting space, and I was working with these businesses who were so caught up in, frankly, making things a lot more complicated than they really are. Mm-hmm. It's like, for example, you have a person who's all of their employees are quitting en masse, and they're like, what's like the leadership philosophy here? And I'm like, you don't need like a leadership philosophy. Like, your people hate you. They don't like working for you. I'm like, you need to be a better boss. And like, we were just making things harder than they needed to be. And so I kind of envisioned this company where, there just really wasn't a lot of fluff. It was really good advice. Is kind of what I envisioned it as. So what I do is I sit down with business owners who are ultimately trying to grow their business. They're trying to make more money. And we really just go to bat on developing their strategy, their thinking long-term, like how do I actually plan to make more money? How do I plan to get more customers? And more importantly, something that you mentioned, especially if they're managing people, how do I build my internal tribe of people who actually like working for me so that this business is actually sustainable? And so I am a consultant, I am a coach, and ultimately just trying to help people grow their businesses. Excellent.
So this might be kind of a weird question, but how did you get into this career path? Like, on your personal journey, how did you discover that this is what you wanted to do?
I wish I was just talking to someone this morning about origin stories, because I watched the Super Bowl on Sunday. Mm-hmm. And, of course, everyone's like, oh my gosh, Tom Brady. And I love Tom Brady, but what's funny is, like, he was a total nobody when he started out. He went in the 6th round. No quarterback goes that late. He's going to be successful. And so I was talking to this person this morning about like origin stories and how like we always have like this really sexy, like, when I was 8 years old, I was running this small business that, somehow was running, making all this money. I don't really have a story like that. I grew up, I went to college. I didn't really know what the heck I was doing. I became a high school teacher, and eventually I had a really bad experience working in this high school where my bosses were really terrible, that I thought, man, I really want to help people have better bosses. And so that's actually how it started. And it led to me working for this consulting company where I got to give advice to people on how to be better bosses. And it literally just kind of evolved from there. There wasn't really any ever like, I don't think any natural acumen or any like, anything I fell into. It just kind of happened, I guess. And so that's the not so sexy version of it. I don't know.
That's awesome. So, and by the way, where in the world are you coming from? Give our our visitors that.
Well, I was just telling Brett, I'm from Arkansas, and usually when I tell people, yeah, I'm from Arkansas, they'll be like, "Oh man, I love Phoenix," and I'm like, "Okay, yeah, that is another state, also starts with an A, but good job." Yeah. So I'm in Arkansas, and I'm in this area. So my city's called Fayetteville. We actually call this area Northwest Arkansas because it's a few different cities all together. But if I can just brag on our town for a little bit. We've been in the top 10 happiest cities for the last 10 years. We are home to Walmart headquarters, Tyson headquarters, JB Hunt headquarters, and many other incredible companies. We're one of the first bike cities, which we ride bikes here. I don't know what else to say about it. And I don't know, it's a pretty cool place. So that's where I am.
I guess riding bikes makes you happy. Did you go to the University of Arkansas?
Yeah, which is also located here.
Oh, nice. You gonna give us a woo pig suey or?
You're probably actually the first person who's ever asked me that since I started my business. But I don't know. It's too early in the morning. Maybe if I get another cup of coffee, I'll indulge into that or something.
Okay, fair enough. So, what type of what type of customers do you work with? You kind of got into that, but what exact audience do you target, and what challenges specifically do you kind of solve for them?
So yeah, there's two different groups of people I work with. One of them really is that early entrepreneur, early startup founder, early small business owner who they're looking for momentum. Maybe they didn't go to business school per se, which is actually a majority of people who are starting their businesses, and they're just trying to make this thing work. Chances are this is a group of people who are also frustrated because what gets portrayed on social media is this overnight success story. Entrepreneurship is amazing. I actually had a guy who he was maybe 19 or 20 years old. And he said, "Man, I'm dying. I'm dying if I don't become an entrepreneur." And I said, "Wow, that's really intense. What do you think entrepreneurship means?" And he's like, "Oh, it's awesome. You get to sleep in as late as you want. No one tells you what to do. It's really great." And I was like, "Okay, that sounds like immaturity. I don't know if that's entrepreneurship."
Yeah.
But it's these people who really, they're trying to grow their business, but they just don't know how. It's like, how do I get that first customer? Or maybe I have a handful of customers and I just don't know how do I actually scale this thing now? What does it mean to hire someone? And that leads me into the second group of people that I work with. And these are larger businesses who they have found success in the sense of they offer a product that people want. But now they're trying to figure out this whole other game of, man, how do I lead people? How do I manage my team? And I really boil those two groups down to this concept of building your tribe of 1,000 raving fans, which is a very simple concept. Most people know about it. But the premise of it came from Kevin Kelly, an article maybe a decade or so ago, that your business does not need millions of buyers. It just needs a tribe of raving fans because repeat buyers are infinitely more profitable than having to find new buyers. And so I've really expanded this concept into not only are you trying to build that tribe of raving fans externally, you're also trying to build that tribe internally, because anyone who's run a business long-term knows that if you're going to build anything sustainable, you need people who actually like working for you. It's expensive to hire. And so it's more profitable. It's better for your business to have people who love they love working for you. And more importantly, they're helping bring about that vision you have that you want to offer to your customers. So that's really the two groups that I work with.
Gotcha. And you speak a lot to culture. So culture sounds like something people may overlook because they just want leads, and they'll hire more team members as they need them. But tell us why you've focused so much there. You've emphasized it a few times in this conversation.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that, Jeff. And it's one of those things that anyone who's actually doing business successfully, they know how important culture is. For everyone else, it's a buzzword. I was just talking to, I have another business I'm working with, and we were talking yesterday about how when we talk about culture, a lot of times what comes to mind is, oh, it's time for a pizza party. It's like it's time to get the troops rallied up again, and that's really not what culture is. It's not, just like with entrepreneurship. It's not this buzzword that's very sexy and oh, this is amazing. Culture is ultimately how we do our business here, and it boils down to frankly what your employees, what they think about themselves and how they fit in your business, what they think about your management of them. Can I count on this person? Can I trust this person? Does this person know what I want to go on and accomplish. And it's very granular. It's not like this sexy, motivating, overarching, I know my mission and I believe in it. Although that's part of it, it's really down to the day to day. Here's actually a really simple example. When I was a high school teacher, I worked in a low income area. And so we had to print out our day-to-day instruction to give to kids who were absent that day. And so you're printing out like hundreds of pages of like homework and lessons and all this. I mean, we probably killed a whole forest doing this stuff. Well, so you have to print all this stuff. And if we didn't print it and have it ready for students who were absent, we'd get in big trouble as teachers. Well, one of the things that really pissed me off is that the printing machine was always busted, never worked. Well, so this element of culture boils down to, I'm going to get in trouble if I don't print this, but I can't print it because the printer is always broken. And so I start to wonder things about, do they really care about me? Do my bosses really care about me? More importantly, do they really care about the students? Because if they did, they would make sure the printer works. And so it's less of this overarching massive concept and more of this understanding of every day you are building your culture for better or worse, and your people are ultimately deciding, do I want to work here for the next 6 months, or would I work here the rest of my life? And really building that tribe of people who are like, man, I want to work here as long as they'll have me. That's infinitely better for your business.
Yeah, because honestly, how are you going to scale without a culture like that, right? As you experience growth, or because it's pretty disruptive to onboard and offboard people, right? We found on our boutique team that when we onboard someone, of course, it slows the person who's like working close with them or peer or boss down immensely until they come up to speed. So it's a big investment, but even offboarding someone could be the same thing. So yeah, that's funny because I know as a marketing agency, we help businesses grow through like lead gen and stuff like that. But so important is the ability to fulfill that demand. Yeah.
Well, so Gallup says that the cost of replacing that person and onboarding them is as low. So the minimum is half of the position's salary. And so, for example, I was talking to a woman who she's had 14 of her staff people leave over the last year. And it's, by the way, she was like, where do I find better people to work with? These people are, millennials are so hard to manage. And I'm like, okay, it's not people. It's you if 14 people have quit over the last year. But the average salary of these 14 positions is $40,000. And so half of that, you're losing $200,000 just literally replacing and onboarding people. I don't know a lot of small businesses who can stand to take a $200,000 hit to especially during COVID, but to their P&L. And a lot of times we don't have that long-term thinking of, oh, well, geez, I need to figure out how to make these people enjoy working here, because otherwise it's killing me long-term. I don't have something sustainable. But then again, as a small business owner, it's hard for me to think beyond day to day. I think that's why a lot of times we don't always think about these kinds of things. But you're so right, though. I think that onboarding, it can be very clunky and expensive if you're having to do it constantly.
Yeah, and that's going to affect your ability to deliver the product and service, which affects your retention and things like that. So if you come into a messy culture, let's take the person with the 14 who quit, or you can use another vanilla example. What are some like practical ways that you dive in and that our audience could maybe use in their business as they think about culture?
Well, I think part of it is you have to take the pressure off of yourself to be this really charismatic, amazing leader. Like a lot of times when we think about leadership, we envision like this heroic person, and ultimately you are a messy, messed up person. And it's okay for your team members to see that. I've known bosses in the past who they say sort of the stereotypical, well, I'm the boss and that's above your pay grade. And well, I can't tell you that information. And it's sort of like this ego driven, this is my opportunity to finally be important. And that just doesn't work in business, especially today's business where people really aren't impressed with titles. They're not really impressed with positions anymore, as opposed to maybe 30 years ago. It's like, hey, I'm the VP of blank. And it's like, okay, cool. Good for you, man. I actually had someone introduce himself as the VP of a certain division, didn't even say their name. And I was like, okay, that doesn't impress me. It doesn't mean anything to me because it's a mundane, it's nothing. And so people today aren't impressed with titles or positions or places of power. They're impressed with people who they can trust. And so what makes a great boss isn't this heroic, incredible figure. It's someone who I know I can trust their values. I know what they stand for. I know what they think about me, not in terms of do they like me or not, but I know that they are at least somewhat engaged in my personal future, in my personal journey. You know, one of the most compelling things that a leader can do today is provide clarity, not charisma, but clarity. So I know how you fit here. And if you aren't sure how you fit here, I'm going to help you figure that out. Let's find the way that you fit here. Let's find out what your future looks like here. Do you want money? Do you want time off? Do you want the next position to put on your resume? Whatever it is, I want to help you get that. And a lot of times we have this incredibly toxic culture because you have people in management who don't think about those things. They don't think about my people in the regard of my job's to steward them and make them maybe even more successful than I am. A lot of times the way people view management is these people are a means to an end. My productivity matters. And so these are my minions to sort of help me achieve greater things. And especially in a small business sense, when you are the person at the top, a lot of times we hire, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but a lot of times we hire just to push the bottom line, to push revenue greater. You know, it's a 24-hour day, and I've totally maxed myself out in terms of the amount of effort I can make happen in a day. So I hire someone to take on some other tasks. So naturally, it's okay to bring someone on to grow your productivity. That's why we hire people. But if the only reason you hire someone is for your own bottom line, you're going to find people who, frankly, they just will not want to attach themselves to your vision. A lot of times people, especially millennials today, they want to work for you because they feel like your business and advancing your bottom line is actually advancing their own mission and their own values and what they care about. And when those two things come together, that's how you really build that raving fan in your business. And that's an effective culture. This whole, it's all about me and my ego and what I can accomplish. That really doesn't go anywhere today.
Gotcha.
And actually, not to cut you off, that person with the 14 employees, when I mentioned to her, hey, in my experience, it's not the employees, it's usually you. Her response was, well, if you're telling me it's my fault, I don't want to work with you. And I thought, okay, well, I don't want to work with you either. I mean, some people they aren't wired to be effective bosses because it really is about them. And for better or worse, they will try to make it happen. What I've seen is that there's no sustainability in that, though.
Gotcha. One last question around that. Do you recommend any kind of we have one-to-one mentoring meetings at our marketing agency. So every other month we'll sit down, we have a standard series of questions, and we find that's a good way to get really high level and not talk about specific project updates or things like that. How do you recommend any kind of thing like that for, connecting, talking about performance, but really understanding where they're at? Because you need time talking outside of the actual day-to-day and projects to, have that understanding with a team member, with an employee.
Totally. I think that's a great idea. It's a great suggestion. A friend of mine works for a startup where the team's totally remote. Even before COVID, they were totally remote. And Slack has some kind of I don't know what it's called. It's like donut something. I don't know what it is, but it will pair you with a random person in your business. And every month you sit down and you hang out with them and you talk with them. And this is part of the reason why I started the business, started the podcast, is when we talk about building culture, we do think about these really magnanimous, awesome things. But the magic of culture is found in those day-to-day conversations that you're talking about. And especially mentor to employee or boss to employee, if the only meat of your relationship are these transactional conversations of, hey, did you get this done? Did you talk to that person? Where you're sort of checking in, you haven't developed any kind of relationship. You haven't developed any kind of trust with your people. And so those kinds of conversation are really important because it helps you have these touch points that are meaningful. And life is all about relationships. Business is no different. I mean, building those relationships with your people, that is absolutely key.
Yeah, so I'm really picking up on this theme of authenticity, right? We used to have the mission statement when you walked in, the inspirational posters, and we're going to make the coffee room cool and have happy hours. And perhaps those, like you said, you're not taking away and saying don't do those things, but we really want to feel understood, feel like we have a place, feel like someone's got our back, so in turn we can have someone else's back.
Well, I mean, it's not bad to have those things. I mean, I'm like, yeah, have a mission statement, but it's like, here's a great example. I was working with a business who they had these really awesome values on the wall. They were really cool. And I was talking to their director of HR, and I was like, that's a really awesome set of values. And she was like, wait, what? She like hadn't even seen it before. She's like, oh, that? Oh, some marketing company put that up. So it should really bother you when you have these amazing, like sexy statements and your employees are like, it sucks here. I hate working here. You suck as a boss. You know, like these are things that like, so these things aren't bad, but like we've made them as substitutions for like how you actually run a business. And that just doesn't work.
So let's jump, Blake, let's jump from the business side of things to kind of your personal entrepreneurial journey. We kind of got into this a little bit before about your start. Tell us about what you think the most rewarding part of your journey so far has been.
I'd say the most rewarding thing, man, that's a great question. I mean, I got into my business because the thing that would light me up would be I'd give an insight or I'd share an insight or I'd help another business owner, and then they would go on to achieve their own success. So it's sort of like this. I had a mentor when I was younger who he challenged me with, it's not about climbing the ladder, which that's a lot of times what we think about like corporately is like, how do I get to the next position or what have you? But he said, you know, my philosophy in life is how do I hold the ladder for someone else to climb up? And I don't know, that's always just struck. I think maybe I just had good parents who were like, you know, don't be a douchebag. I don't know. I just kind of always just thought like that's kind of the joy of life is we are tasked with making other people more successful. And so that is ultimately what's rewarding about my job. Obviously, there's other things that people who've been in corporate America who are no longer in it can also attest to. Flexibility, having control over my own schedule. These things are really nice for me. I have a 10-month-old. And so being able to be present for her is really awesome. You know, these are all things that are just like little added sweetness factors, I guess, to it.
Little perks. Yeah, definitely. So from the other side of the coin, what would you say is among the biggest challenges you've faced as an entrepreneur?
Well, I mean, it's really up to you to make it happen. I mean, you know, my wife is a freaking rock star and she's never been like, what are you doing? But I know there's been some days where we've looked at the bank account and she's kind of been like, so, you know, I mean, the challenge is showing up every day. I mean, you are the person who's in control of your own success for better or worse. And what I have found is one of the biggest challenges is just consistency, belief in myself and showing up day after day after day. There's definitely days where, you know, I'm like, man, I don't want to do anything. I just feel like a failure. I don't feel like I'm making this happen the way I want it to. And at the end of the day, you don't have a coworker, you don't have a boss who's going to pull you in their office and say, man, I believe in you, go get them. You have the mirror. And that's what you're getting in front of every day and thinking, did I offer what I know I should be offering or didn't I? And that is the challenge, I think, of entrepreneurship. And it's why I think we make entrepreneurship sexier than it is because really those of us who are actually doing it, we realize this is probably the hardest thing we've ever done.
Sure. Yeah. A lot of leaning on yourself.
You mentioned something interesting there, Blake. And I actually heard this said at one of the PodMax where we met, PodMax conference keynote speakers, is if you've never stayed up at night worrying about payroll, then you're not an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
Where the rubber hits the road is the cash. And while we can have savings and perhaps investment money at some point without like new income, there's some really finite consequences there.
Yeah, I think I remember that speaker and it was so good. I think he actually said something like waking up in a sweat in the middle of the night. And it's like, yeah, I think me and my fellow entrepreneurs can all relate to like the pure agony of, and frankly, the constant, I mean, like I said, I have an 11-month-old or a 10-month-old. She's about to be 11 months. The constant agony of, did I ruin her life? You know, because I was in a great job. I had a great job, great payroll, great future there. And I quit. And so like, there's definitely this daunting sense of what have I done with my life? You know, and that's for me to manage. That's for every entrepreneur to think about.
How long has it been, by the way, since you've had good advice? Say full time?
2 years. I started October 1st of 2019.
Wow. And then the pandemic came.
Oh, wait, 2018. So I had a full year. Okay. And then in my second year, the pandemic hit. Yeah. And that was interesting because they talk about how business really, it picks up over time. The first year is really slow. Well, my second year, in January, I signed one of the biggest hospitals. And I say sign like I'm an agent or something, but I closed a contract with one of the biggest hospitals in my area, and it was a really great development for the business. And it was March 10th. March 11th was when my baby was born. And literally we're in the hospital and I get an email from this hospital, and they had the first confirmed case of COVID. Wow. And they were suspending all external contracts. And that was a real like, okay, what is this going to mean? Like, this is a real, because I was planning on taking like the next 3 months off. Right. And all of a sudden I started getting phone calls and messages of like, hey, we're suspending this contract. We're not going to do this. That'll really wake you up in the middle of the night, especially as you have like this little bundle of joy in front of you.
Yeah, great timing. That's nuts, man. And glad that's awesome. 10 months. So you got the year coming up. Congratulations. I'm sure you're excited for the big birthday.
After alive. Go me.
Yeah. Good stuff. You had Jeff here on your podcast recently, and your podcast is awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about that if we can. Tell us a little bit about the Good Advice podcast.
Yeah, so the Good Advice podcast started because I was frankly really, if I can just be really candid, I was really just pissed off. Well, there were two things actually. I one of them I wasn't pissed off about. The second one I was. So I'll talk about what I wasn't pissed off about. I had worked at this consulting company, and it felt like we were really slow to innovate. And so one example of that was we had always done in-person meetings. And one of the things that I was passionate about, I had met with the guy who was saying, man, voice is getting really big, podcasting is getting really big. And we were just slow to pivot and do things like that. And so whenever I started my business, I knew two things I wanted to do. I wanted to have a digital offering where I could sell and consult people, even if we weren't physically in the same location. And I wanted to have a podcast. And that just felt like something important to do. The second thing, and this is the biggest reason why I started doing it, was I had talked to a number of salespeople, marketers, and what have you, who the way they presented business was not what I was seeing firsthand. And so here's a really great example of this. This is something that you might even see as you're scrolling through Facebook and seeing ads pop up. Someone would say something like, hey, you don't need a website. Let me give you the email script that will get you $30,000 a week guaranteed just from one email. And you don't need a website to do it. Now, the irony here would be like the ad would be pointing to their website where, you would actually buy this script or what have you. But anybody who's been in business knows that it's kind of like the whole it's too good to be true concept. But they just know that growing and sustaining a business, there's a lot more work that comes with it. Building a healthy sales pipeline, it's about relationships and multiple touch points. It's rare that you sell people on the very first go around. But what was getting presented online was this very, frankly, a bit of a snake oil salesperson type approach of just send this email, run this ad, just do this, and your business will flourish. And so I put together the podcast because I had actually been burned. I lost about $5,000 on a marketer who I had really believed would do a lot for my business and who didn't. And I started the podcast thinking, we really need an honest place to talk about entrepreneurship, an honest place to talk about business. And then some of the best guests who've come on, like Jeff, have been people who haven't come on and been like, oh yeah, I just woke up one day and I just started selling and it was amazing. I made all this money. It's people who've gotten on and been like, yeah, it's been a journey. Here's what my journey's been like. And here's the real honest take of it. And so that's the main reason why I put the podcast together was I wanted to almost encourage business owners to know that, hey, if you feel dysfunctional, it's probably okay. You're probably part of the journey. And here's some just honest, tangible, good advice. That's not theory. It's not sexy sales talk. It's literally, okay, your people quit because you're a bad boss. So what are you going to do about it? Instead of like, let's talk about this book on leadership or what have you. So that's how it came together.
Instead of trying to hit you with the Wolf of Wall Street script.
I thought about it, but yeah, I wouldn't, I thought about buying my GameStop stock, but
yeah, there you go. Yeah. Go to the moon with it. So how long have you been doing the podcast? Where can we stream it? Tell our people here where they can check out more.
Yeah, the podcast is literally anywhere you listen to a podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, wherever. And it started up literally, again, in October when I started the business. We are publishing, I think, episode 170 here pretty soon. So it's been around. It's consistent. It comes on twice, sometimes 3 times a week. I always have a guest each week. I always have a topic that I'm sharing on each week. And like I said, you can find it anywhere. And people should also check out our Patreon, which is patreon.com/goodadvice, because there's some other perks that people can get with the podcast, including some premium episodes. I mentioned the business that I'm working with on. We're talking about really sustainability and growing your business with managing your people well. That presentation will be on the podcast, but only for the premium listeners. So people can check that out as well.
Excellent. Very, very cool. Awesome, man. Well, let's get into some personal stuff. Let's do a rapid fire round. You ready for this, Blake? Are you prepped?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Let's kick it off. Outside of work, how do you stay energized? What's a kind of a hobby you're into outside of work?
So this is going to sound like I'm such a prude, but we love coffee. And so one of our things, we have a local coffee shop. I'm going to rep them, Onyx Coffee. They're amazing. If you're ever in Northwest Arkansas, you got to try them out. Actually, you just go ahead and order some to your house, wherever you're at. But Onyx Coffee, so typically one of our favorite things to do is we either brew it at home or we'll go pick it up. And we just like to drive around. We love nature. We love the outdoors. But we'll drive around. We'll talk. I'm talking, my wife and I, obviously. And then we have our hobbies like Netflix and I'm surprised to say this, but Disney Plus now is one of my hobbies. Okay. I'm a big Mandalorian fan. I'm a big WandaVision fan. We love Marvel. And so typically we're watching that, trying to get into Cobra Kai. So yeah, we have our shows, and then we love to cook too. So it's not uncommon after a long day that Joy and I like to get in the kitchen and try to whip something up.
Nice. Good stuff. Good stuff. What's one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self? Another tough one, man. Coming with
trying to think of would I give advice on how to avoid wasting money on bad marketers, or would I would probably encourage myself just to remember, I'd probably encourage myself to live life a little bit more slowly, instead of getting wrapped up in like the next thing or where I need to go next. 'Cause I'm pretty energized around what I'm trying to accomplish. And I think I've probably missed some opportunities or missed some people that I probably could have noticed and formed relationships with because I was so focused on, whatever the next thing was. So slow down and just enjoy life a little bit more. There you go. That's pretty good advice. So you gave us some Netflix recommendations. You gave us the Disney Plus recommendation. How about a book? Are you reading any books? You got anything? Yeah. So we are reading, we have a couple of books, and one of them is going to be actually, I'm going to say both of them. One of them is called George Mueller, and it's this random biography that my wife found, but he is a guy who started, it was like the first orphanage in England. And it's just this really cool story of this guy who, was just like, man, I want to trust God to build this. Really, it's all about giving back. And we were kind of like, man, what's our role to make a difference where we live, rather than this, I don't know. It's kind of like Bill Gates talking about his little organization to get all the billionaires to give away their wealth. We kind of just been thinking about, okay, how do we're nowhere near a billionaire at all ever, but how do we make make a difference in our area? So I'm reading that. And then I've been thinking a lot about the sweeter things in life. And so I was remembering a book that I read when I was a kid called Redwall. And it's like a kid's book on these animals that talk or whatever. I probably just lost your audience. What is he talking about? Because I probably should have given a business book, actually, now that I think about it. But I'm reading, I just ordered one of those books off Amazon because I haven't read it since I was 12 years old. And I want to read it again. So that'll be coming in the mail sometime soon. That's awesome. And if you want to know a business book, your people should read Good to Great or something. So
very good. Very good. So let's end it on a positive note. Tell us about something that you're deeply grateful for right now. First thing that comes to mind.
My house. I got a house. I got a family. I got food on the table. It's just the little things, man. Every day we're trying to remember what should we be grateful for. I have a freaking phenomenal house, an awesome family. It's something I need to remember every day.
That's what I'm talking about, man. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, if everybody watching this wants to connect with you, they want to find out more about you. Obviously, you're a very interesting dude. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for joining us. If they want to find out more about you, tell them where to head.
So you can go to linkedin.com/Blake Benz. I post there almost every day. You can also go to our website, goodadvicecoaching.com. And you can email me, blake@goodadvicecoaching.com. I try to respond to literally every email that comes in my inbox. Please do not send me your cold pitch DM cell because I will avoid you and ignore you. But other than that, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. And make sure you check out the podcast too.
Excellent. Excellent stuff. Yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, the podcast is awesome and everyone should check it out. It's very, very good. And best of luck with everything moving forward. Our first ever guest is in the books and we couldn't have picked a better one. Thank you so much for joining us, Blake. You are the
Thanks, Blake.
Thanks for having me today. I appreciate it.
All right, everybody. We will see you next week on the Create With Us podcast. Enjoy your day.